Evelyn Harper had learned long ago that invisibility was easier than disappointment. She stood in the corner of the glittering ballroom, watching her older sister Isabel command the attention of every person present, human and vampire alike. The annual Summit Ball was the social event of the season, where the mortal elite mingled with the immortal aristocracy under crystal chandeliers that caught the light like frozen tears. Isabel wore crimson silk that clung to her curves, her golden hair swept up to reveal the elegant line of her throat. She laughed, bright and musical, surrounded by admirers who hung on her every word. Their mother had been clear before they arrived. Let Isabel make the impression tonight. She's finally caught the eye of Lord Cassian, and we can't afford any distractions. You understand, don't you, darling? Evelyn understood perfectly. She always understood. At 22, she had spent her entire life understanding that her role was to fade into the background while Isabel shone. Her younger by 2 years sister had always been the beautiful one, the charming one, the one who would secure their family's position in this new world order, where vampires ruled from the shadows and humans scrambled for their favor. So Evelyn wore dove gray instead of jewel tones. She kept her dark auburn hair in a simple twist rather than anything elaborate. She stayed by the marble columns and sipped champagne she didn't want, making herself as small and unremarkable as possible. But she couldn't stop her eyes from wandering across the ballroom to where he stood. Zachariah Konstantin, the vampire king. Even among the pale, ethereal beauty of his kind, he was magnificent. White hair fell past his shoulders like moonlight made solid, contrasting sharply with the black formal wear that seemed tailored by darkness itself. His skin was porcelain pale, flawless and cold as marble. But it was his eyes that caught her, deep crimson like wine or blood or rubies held up to candlelight, ancient and knowing and impossibly focused. On her, not on Isabel, who was currently batting her eyelashes at a vampire lord 3 columns over. Not on any of the dozen beautiful women who kept finding excuses to drift past him. On Evelyn, hidden in her corner, trying desperately to be invisible. She looked away quickly, her heart hammering. She must have imagined it. Kings didn't look at girls like her. Especially not vampire kings who could have literally anyone they desired. You're being ridiculous, she whispered to herself, draining the rest of her champagne with less grace than she'd intended. Talking to yourself is the first sign of madness, they say. Evelyn nearly dropped her glass. The voice came from directly beside her, low, dark, with an accent that spoke of centuries in distant places. She turned, and her breath caught. Zachariah Konstantin stood less than 2 feet away. Close enough that she could see the inhuman perfection of his features, the way his presence seemed to draw all the warmth from the air around them. Up close, he was even more devastating. Tall enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet those crimson eyes, broad-shouldered, with the kind of predatory grace that reminded her exactly what he was. A hunter. An apex predator. A creature that could end her life with less effort than it took her to breathe. Your Majesty, she managed, dropping into a curtsy that felt clumsy and human compared to his fluid elegance. I didn't mean I wasn't. You weren't trying to attract attention, he finished, his lips curving into something that wasn't quite a smile. Yes, I noticed. You've been very dedicated to your invisibility all evening. Heat flooded her cheeks. I don't know what you mean, don't you? He moved closer and she caught his scent, something like winter nights and old books and danger. While your sister works the room like a seasoned courtesan, you hide in corners and pretend you don't exist. I find myself wondering why. I'm not hiding, I'm simply allowing her space to shine. She's better at these things than I am. His head tilted, bird-like, despite his regal bearing. Is she, or is that simply what you've been told? The question struck something deep in her chest, some old wound she'd learned to ignore. With all respect, Your Majesty, why would you care? Surely you have more important matters to attend to than interrogating wallflowers. Something flickered in those ancient eyes, amusement perhaps, or interest. Perhaps I find wallflowers more intriguing than peacocks. Tell me your name. Evelyn Harper. Evelyn, he repeated as if tasting the syllables. The Harper family. Your father supplies textiles to the court, yes, imported silks mostly. He has contracts throughout Europe and Asia, and your mother pushes your sister toward vampire nobility while hiding you away. Interesting strategy. Evelyn stiffened. She's not hiding me, she's simply being practical. Isabel is beautiful, charming, obvious. Zachariah stepped even closer, close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from his skin. She's all of those things. But you, Evelyn Harper, are something far more rare. Her mouth went dry. What's that, real? Before she could process what he meant, a commotion erupted across the ballroom. Isabel's laugh rang out, slightly too loud, slightly too sharp. Lord Cassian, the vampire she'd been courting, had his hand on her sister's waist, and Isabel was leaning into him with practiced ease. Their mother appeared at Evelyn's elbow like a summoned ghost. "Evelyn, darling, why don't you go freshen up? I need to." "Oh." She froze as she registered who Evelyn was speaking with. "Your Majesty. Forgive me, I didn't realize you were. That is, my daughter didn't mention." "Your daughter was being an excellent conversationalist," Zachariah said coolly. "I was just asking her to dance." Evelyn's eyes widened. "You were?" "I was." His hand extended toward her, pale and elegant and absolutely terrifying. "Unless you object?" Every instinct screamed at her to refuse. Dancing with the Vampire King would put her directly in the spotlight she'd spent all evening avoiding. It would contradict everything her mother had instructed. It would steal attention from Isabel, but those crimson eyes held hers with an intensity that made refusal impossible. "I don't object," she heard herself say. His hand closed around hers, cold as winter, strong as steel. He led her onto the dance floor, and she was acutely aware of every eye in the ballroom turning toward them. The orchestra shifted into a waltz, and then Zachariah's hand was on her waist, pulling her closer than was strictly proper, and they were moving. He danced like breathing, like gravity, like something inevitable. Evelyn had taken lessons. Of course all daughters of merchant families did, but she'd never danced with anyone like this. He guided her effortlessly through the steps, making her feel graceful in a way she'd never felt before. "You're tense," he observed. "Everyone's staring at us. Let them stare." "I am." She risked a glance up at him. "Why? Why am I staring?" "Because you're fascinating." "I'm not. I'm perfectly ordinary." "You genuinely believe that?" He sounded almost surprised. "They've done quite a number on you, haven't they? Your family." "They've done nothing but love and support me," Evelyn said automatically. The words she'd repeated to herself for years. "Love that demands you diminish yourself isn't love, Evelyn. It's control." The words hit too close to something she'd never let herself examine. "You don't know anything about my family. I know what I see. A brilliant, beautiful woman convinced she's neither. A sister treated like a rival to be suppressed. A mother who values strategy over her daughter's happiness." His hand tightened on her waist. "I know what I see when I look at you. And what's that? Someone extraordinary trying desperately to be ordinary. Someone who thinks too much and feels too deeply and has learned to hide both. Someone who deserves far better than the role she's been assigned." Evelyn's throat tightened dangerously. "You can't possibly know all that from one conversation. I've been watching you all evening, Evelyn. Before I approached, I watched you watch the room. I saw how you noticed everything, every power play, every manipulation, every false smile. I saw how you observed your sister working Lord Cassian and knew exactly what game she was playing. I saw intelligence and perception and a sadness that made me want to know why. Vampires don't care about human sadness. This one does." The music swelled and he spun her in a turn that made her dress flare around her legs. "This one cares very much." The dance ended too soon. He released her with obvious reluctance, but before she could step away, he caught her hand again. "Meet me tomorrow night. The East Gardens of the Palace, midnight." "I can't possibly." "You can. You will." His thumb brushed across her knuckles, a touch that sent electricity racing up her arm. "I'm not finished talking to you, Evelyn Harper." Then he was gone, melting back into the crowd of courtiers and nobility, leaving her standing alone in the center of the dance floor with her heart racing and her mind spinning. Her mother descended on her immediately. "What did he say to you? What did you talk about?" "Nothing. Just pleasantries." "The Vampire King doesn't dance with anyone for just pleasantries, Evelyn." "Did he mention Isabel? Did he ask about her?" "No, Mother." Her mother's lips thinned. "Well, try not to engage him again if you can help it. We can't have him confused about which daughter is available." The words stung more than they should have. Of course not. But that night, lying in her bedroom in their family's estate, Evelyn couldn't stop thinking about crimson eyes and cold hands and a voice that had called her extraordinary. Couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd looked at her like she mattered, like she was visible. She shouldn't go tomorrow night. She knew that. It violated every instruction she'd been given, every role she'd been assigned. Good daughters stayed in their lane. Good daughters let their sisters shine. But maybe just this once, she wanted to be something other than good. The palace gardens were legendary acres of cultivated beauty hidden behind iron gates and vampire guards. Evelyn had never been inside them. She wore simple clothes, a dark cloak, nothing that would draw attention as she slipped out of her family's estate and made her way through the lamplit streets. She'd told herself a dozen times she wouldn't go, that this was foolish and dangerous and wrong. But her feet carried her forward anyway, past the checkpoints where guards nodded her through with knowing looks, through the massive gates that swung open at her approach, into the gardens themselves. They were breathtaking. Moonlight silvered the paths between topiaries shaped like mythical creatures. Fountains sang in the darkness. Flowers she couldn't name perfumed the air, night-blooming things that only opened under stars. You came. She jumped, spinning to find Zachariah emerging from a hedge-lined path. He wore no formal wear tonight, just dark clothing that made him look like a piece of the night itself. His white hair was loose around his shoulders, and those crimson eyes caught the moonlight like a wolf's. "I shouldn't have," she said. "But you did." He moved closer, and she held her ground despite every instinct that screamed at her to run. "Thank you. Why did you want to see me?" "Because I haven't stopped thinking about you since last night." He said it simply, like it was fact rather than poetry. "Because in 3 centuries of existence, I've never met anyone who made me feel the way you do." Evelyn's breath caught. "That's impossible, you don't even know me." "Then let me know you. Talk to me. Tell me about yourself." "There's nothing to tell. I'm exactly what you saw, ordinary girl from a merchant family trying to survive in a world ruled by vampires, ordinary." He shook his head slowly. "You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. Tell me what you do, Evelyn, what you think about, what you want." The question was so direct it disarmed her. I read mostly. And I help my father with his business accounts. I'm good with numbers." "What do you read?" "Everything. History, philosophy, novels. I like understanding how things work, societies, economies, power structures." "And what have you concluded about our current power structure?" She hesitated. This felt like dangerous ground. "That it's fragile. Humans resent vampire rule but lack the strength to challenge it. Vampires need human cooperation but disdain human weakness. The whole system is held together by fear and necessity rather than genuine alliance. It won't last." Zachariah stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, a real laugh, rich and surprised. 3 centuries. Evelyn. For 3 centuries I've been surrounded by advisors and generals and politicians, and not one of them has stated the problem as clearly as you just did. You see it. The fundamental instability. It's obvious if you're paying attention. To you, perhaps. Most humans are too busy scrambling for vampire favor to think critically about the system. And most vampires are too arrogant to acknowledge that we need humans as much as they need us. He moved to a stone bench beneath a willow tree and sat, gesturing for her to join him. "What's your solution?" "I don't have one. I'm nobody. My opinions don't matter. They matter to me. Sit, please." She sat, keeping careful distance between them, trying to ignore how the moonlight made him look like something out of a dream. A real alliance would require vulnerability on both sides. Vampires would have to give up some control. Humans would have to give up some resentment. Both would have to admit they're stronger together than apart. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's probably impossible. People, human or vampire, don't give up power easily. And trust is earned over time, which is hard when one side lives for centuries and the other dies in decades. What if there were ways to bridge that gap? Ways for humans to live longer, share in vampire strength without becoming vampires themselves? Then you'd have to convince your people to share those ways. And you'd have to convince my people they wouldn't be giving up their humanity in the process. She glanced at him. "Why are you asking me this?" "Because I've been thinking about exactly these questions for decades, and no one else seems to care. They're content with the status quo, the careful dance of dominance and submission. But you see it, the instability, the opportunity." He turned to face her fully. "You have a brilliant mind, Evelyn Harper. It's criminal that your family wastes it." "They don't waste it. They're practical. Isabel is the one with the charm and beauty to make a good match. I'm better suited to staying in the background." "Do you want to stay in the background?" The question pierced something in her chest. "It doesn't matter what I want. It matters to me. Answer the question." She looked away toward the fountain where water caught the moonlight. "Sometimes I imagine what it would be like to be seen. Truly seen, not as someone's sister or daughter or potential alliance, but as myself. To have my thoughts valued. To matter." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "But that's foolish. That's not how the world works." "It could be." His hand covered hers on the bench between them, cold and gentle. "It should be." She should pull away. She knew she should. But his touch felt like an anchor, like proof that this moment was real. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Why me?" "Because from the moment I saw you trying to disappear in that ballroom, I couldn't look away. Because when I spoke to you, you didn't simper or flatter or try to manipulate me. You were honest. Real. Because you have a mind that matches mine and a heart that I want to understand." He paused. "Because in 300 years, Evelyn, I have never met anyone who made me feel less alone." Tears stung her eyes. "You're the vampire king. You're surrounded by people constantly. Surrounded, yes. Less alone, no. There's a difference between being seen and being understood. You understand things. You understand me, I think, better than you realize. I don't understand anything. I'm completely confused. This doesn't make sense. You could have anyone. I don't want anyone. I want you." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and true. Evelyn's heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. "This is crazy," she whispered. "Probably. My family will never allow it. Your court will never accept it. Let me worry about that. You're a vampire. I'm human. There are 1,000 reasons this can't work, and only one reason it can." His hand tightened on hers. "I'm falling in love with you, Evelyn Harper. I think I started falling the moment I saw you hiding in that corner, trying so hard not to be noticed. And I want to spend whatever time we have learning everything about you, arguing philosophy in moonlit gardens, making you believe that you're extraordinary, if you'll let me." She should say no, should protect herself from the inevitable heartbreak, should remember her place, her role, everything she'd been taught. Instead, she heard herself say, "I'd like that." His smile was like sunrise, bright and warm despite his cold nature. "Then we have an agreement." They talked until dawn threatened the horizon and he had to retreat to shelter. They talked about books and politics and the nature of immortality. They talked about her childhood and his centuries. They talked like two people who'd been waiting their entire lives to find someone who understood. And when he finally walked her to the garden gates as the sky began to lighten, he lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles that felt like a promise. "Tomorrow night?" he asked. "Tomorrow night," she agreed. She should have known it couldn't stay secret for long. 3 nights later, her mother confronted her in the breakfast room. "The servants say you've been leaving the house after midnight. Where are you going?" Evelyn kept her eyes on her plate. "Just walking. I can't sleep sometimes. Alone, at night, with vampires roaming the streets? Don't lie to me, Evelyn. I'm not. You're seeing someone." Her mother's voice turned sharp. "Who is it?" "One of the vampire lords. Because I swear to you, if you ruin your sister's chances with Lord Cassian, it has nothing to do with Isabel. Everything you do affects Isabel. Don't you understand that? We're so close to securing her future, to elevating this entire family, and you're sneaking around like some common." She stopped herself, breathing hard. "I want a name now." Evelyn met her mother's eyes steadily. "Zachariah Konstantin." The color drained from her mother's face. "The Vampire King, yes, you're lying, you must be lying. He would never not with you." The words hurt more than they should have. "Thank you for your confidence, Mother. That's not what I meant. I just..." "Evelyn, this doesn't make sense. Why would he pursue you when Isabel is right there? She's the one who's supposed to..." Realization dawned across her face. "Oh God. You're trying to steal her spotlight. You're jealous." "I'm not jealous. I didn't pursue him. He pursued me. Then you should have refused. You should have directed his attention to your sister. That's what family does, Evelyn. We support each other. We work together. We don't sabotage each other's chances." "How is this sabotage?" "Isabel still has Lord Cassian. She's doing fine." "Fine isn't good enough. The Vampire King is the ultimate prize, and you, who have never done anything but fade into the background, suddenly you're meeting him in secret? No. I won't allow it. I'm 22 years old. You can't forbid me from seeing someone. I absolutely can. You live under my roof, you follow my rules, and my rule is that you will stop this immediately. You will not see him again. You will not speak to him if he approaches you. And you will apologize to your sister for this betrayal." "Betrayal? What betrayal? I've done nothing to Isabel. You've stolen attention that should be hers. You've made yourself the center of a story that was supposed to be about her." Her mother's voice rose. "Do you have any idea how hard I've worked to position her correctly? How many years of planning this has taken? And you're destroying it all because you're selfish enough to think you deserve..." "Deserve what, Mother? Deserve to be loved? Deserve to be happy? Deserve to be something other than Isabel's shadow?" The slap came fast and sharp, cracking across her cheek. They both froze. "Go to your room," her mother said coldly. "And don't come out until you're ready to apologize and do what's right for this family." Evelyn went, but not to obey. She packed a bag with clothes and books and the small amount of money she'd saved from helping her father. Then she climbed out her bedroom window, down the trellis that had helped her escape to the gardens these past nights, and disappeared into the city. She couldn't go back to the palace. That would be too obvious, too dangerous. Instead, she found a small inn in the merchant quarter, paid for a week with half her savings, and tried to figure out what came next. The answer came that evening, when she returned from buying bread, to find Zachariah waiting in her room. She nearly screamed before recognizing him. "How did you find you?" "I'm the Vampire King, Evelyn. I have resources." His eyes raked over her face, stopping on the fading red mark on her cheek. Something dangerous flickered in his expression. "Who hurt you?" "It doesn't matter. It matters immensely. Tell me who did this. She set down her bread and turned away. My mother, we argued. I left. She struck you. His voice had gone cold not with indifference but with fury so deep it turned to ice. She struck you because of me, because I refused to stop seeing you, because I'm supposed to stay in the background and let Isabel have everything. Evelyn wrapped her arms around herself. She's right in a way. I am being selfish. I'm disrupting their plans. Their plans are not your responsibility. He crossed to her in 2 strides, turning her to face him with gentle but unyielding hands. Listen to me. You are not selfish for wanting to be loved. You are not wrong for refusing to sacrifice yourself for your sister's ambitions. And you are absolutely not responsible for managing other people's reactions to your happiness. Easy for you to say, you're a king, you can do whatever you want. Can I? A bitter laugh escaped him. My court has spent the last 3 days in an uproar because I've been courting a human woman. My advisors are demanding I take a vampire consort to strengthen political alliances. My generals think I'm being distracted from important military matters. My own brother has called me a fool. He cupped her face, careful of the bruise. I can do what I want, yes, but not without consequences, not without fight. The question is whether it's worth fighting for. And is it? She whispered. You are. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. You are worth every fight, every consequence, every complication. But you have to believe that too. You have to choose yourself, Evelyn, because no one else will choose you. Not your mother, not your sister, not anyone who benefits from you staying small and quiet and obedient. You have to decide that you matter. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I don't know how. I've spent my whole life being told I don't. Then let me show you. He pulled her close, and despite the cold of his body, she'd never felt warmer. Come with me, not back to your family, not to hiding, come to the palace, openly. As my acknowledged guest, your court will hate me, some will. Others will be curious. A few might even support you. But all of them will have to respect you because I do. And in my world, that's what matters. This is insane. Probably. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. But I've lived 3 centuries being rational and diplomatic and politically careful. And none of it has made me feel as alive as these past few days with you. So maybe insane is exactly what I need, what we both need. She thought of her mother's anger, her sister's probable fury, the years of being told to stay quiet and small. She thought of the life she'd have if she went back, more invisibility, more diminishment, more watching from corners while others lived. Then she thought of moonlit gardens and conversations that made her soul sing. Thought of crimson eyes that saw her, truly saw her, and valued what they found. Thought of being extraordinary instead of ordinary. Okay, she heard herself say. Okay, yes. His smile could have lit the darkness. Then let's give them something to talk about. The palace was even more magnificent inside than she'd imagined. Zachariah led her through marble corridors lit by captured starlight in crystal spheres, past guards who bowed as they passed, through halls hung with tapestries older than countries. She felt desperately out of place in her simple dress and practical boots, but his hand stayed firm on the small of her back, grounding her. He brought her to a suite of rooms that looked like something from a fairy tale, all silk and velvet and windows that overlooked the city. These are yours, he said. For as long as you want them, Zachariah. I can't possibly. You can, you will. He turned to face her. I need you to understand something. I'm not offering you these rooms as charity or pity. I'm offering them because I want you here, close to me, where I can see you and talk to you and know that you're safe. And because you deserve beautiful things, Evelyn Harper. You deserve to live in a place that reflects how extraordinary you are. She looked around at the luxury, so foreign from everything she'd known. Your court is going to think I'm your mistress. Let them think what they want. We'll correct them when we're ready. When we're ready for what? He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from his skin. When we're ready to make this official. When you're ready for me to formally declare my intention to bind myself to you. When you're ready to be courted properly, publicly, with all the ceremony and respect you deserve. Her heart stuttered. You mean marriage? We call it binding, but yes, the vampire equivalent. An eternal commitment witnessed by the court and sealed in blood and magic, making you not just my consort but my acknowledged partner, my equal. His hand found hers. I know it's too soon to speak of such things. We've known each other days, not months or years. But I also know what I want. And I want you, Evelyn. Not for a night or a season, but for whatever time we have. Whether that's your human lifetime or something longer. Something longer? You mean turning me? Only if you wanted it. Only if we reached a point where you decided immortality was worth its costs. I would never force that choice on you. His grip tightened. But I had to be honest about my intentions. I'm not playing games. I'm not indulging in a casual dalliance. I'm courting you with the full intention of keeping you forever, in whatever form that takes." It should have terrified her. The intensity, the speed, the impossibility of it all. But instead, she felt something settle in her chest, a rightness, like a key finding its lock. "I want that too," she whispered. "I want you this, all of it." His kiss was cold fire, gentle and consuming all at once. She gasped against his mouth, and he gathered her closer, one hand tangling in her hair, while the other pressed against her lower back. He kissed her like she was precious, like she was everything, like he'd been waiting centuries for exactly this moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, though he didn't technically need to breathe, he rested his forehead against hers. "Stay here tonight. Let me show my court that you're under my protection. Tomorrow we'll deal with the consequences together." The consequences arrived before tomorrow. Evelyn woke to shouting in the corridor outside her rooms. She pulled on a robe and opened the door to find Zachariah facing down an elegant vampire woman with white hair bound in elaborate braids and eyes like chips of amber. "This is madness, brother," the woman was saying. "You've been king for 2 centuries. You cannot jeopardize everything we've built for some human girl." "Careful, Serafina," Zachariah said, his voice dangerously soft. "That human girl is someone I care about deeply. She's also standing right behind me." Serafina's eyes flicked past him to Evelyn. She looked her up and down with obvious disdain. "So this is the creature causing such upheaval. Tell me, girl, what do you want from my brother? Money, power, immortality?" "I want none of those things," Evelyn said, lifting her chin despite her fear. "I want to know him, talk to him, be with him. That's all." "How charmingly naive. You're aware he's a king? That his choices affect thousands of vampires and millions of humans? That by pursuing you he's insulting every vampire family that has offered him appropriate matches?" "Serafina, enough," Zachariah growled. "No, it's fine." Evelyn stepped around him, moving to face his sister directly. "You're right that his choices carry weight. But you're wrong if you think I'm unaware of that. I've thought of nothing else since he first approached me. I know I'm not what anyone expected. I know I complicate things. But I also know that he deserves happiness, not just political convenience. And if that makes me naive, so be it." Something flickered in Serafina's amber eyes, respect perhaps, or at least reassessment. "You have courage, I'll grant you that. But courage won't be enough when the court turns against you, when other humans resent you for rising above your station. When your own family disowns you for this choice." "My family already has," Evelyn said quietly. "And I'm still here." Serafina studied her for a long moment. Then she turned to Zachariah. "She's not what I expected." "No one ever expects the things that matter most," he said. "The council demands an audience, tonight. They want answers about your intentions. Then they'll have them. Evelyn will attend with me." "Brother, that's unwise." "She attends with me or I don't attend at all. Those are the options." Serafina sighed, a sound like winter wind. "Very well, but dress her properly. If you insist on making her a spectacle, at least make her a magnificent one." After she left, Zachariah turned to Evelyn with apology in his eyes. "I'm sorry, she's protective and change frightens her. But she'll come around. Will she? Will any of them? Some will, others won't, but we'll face them together." He took her hands. "Are you ready for this? For a court full of vampires demanding to know why their king has chosen you?" She thought of all the times she'd stayed quiet while others questioned her worth. All the times she'd accepted being invisible because it was easier than fighting. "No," she said honestly. "But I'm tired of hiding. So let's show them who I am." The dressmakers arrived within the hour. They brought fabrics in jewel tones and midnight shades, discussing cuts and styles in rapid-fire French. Evelyn stood on a platform while they pinned and measured, feeling like a doll being prepared for display. "The green," the lead seamstress declared. "Emerald silk with black lace. It will complement her coloring and show them she's not trying to imitate vampire pallor." By evening, Evelyn barely recognized herself. The dress was a masterpiece, emerald silk that flowed like water, with black lace at the bodice and sleeves that made her auburn hair seem to burn within her fire. They'd styled her hair in an elaborate updo woven with tiny diamonds that caught the light. She looked like someone who belonged in a palace, like someone who could stand beside a king. Zachariah arrived to escort her to the council chamber. He wore formal black with silver embroidery, his white hair loose, his crimson eyes bright with pride. "You're stunning." "I'm terrified." "Good. That means you're smart." He offered his arm. "But you're not alone, remember that." The council chamber was circular, with rising tiers of seats around a central floor. Every seat was filled with vampires, all pale and beautiful and ancient, and watching as Zachariah led her to the center of the room. The weight of their attention pressed against her like physical force. At the highest tier sat the council members themselves, 12 vampires who looked like they'd been carved from ice and cruelty. The one in the center, a male with white hair bound in a warrior's knot and eyes like frozen silver, spoke first. King Zachariah, you've requested this audience to address concerns about your recent associations. I've requested nothing, Lord Malachi. You demanded this audience because my private life seems to fascinate you all suddenly. A ripple of reaction ran through the gathered vampires. Malachi's expression didn't change. When the king's private life involves publicly courting a human woman of no particular standing, it ceases to be private. It becomes political. Then let's discuss politics. What specifically concerns you about my choice of companion? She's human for a start. Another council member, a woman with hair like spun platinum, interjected. Fragile, temporary, unsuitable for a king who will rule for millennia. I've ruled alone for 2 centuries. Why is my continued solitude suddenly so important? Because you're finally showing interest in binding yourself to someone, and rather than choosing a match that strengthens our political position, you've fixated on this girl. Malachi's eyes raked over Evelyn with obvious dismissal. What does she offer? What skills, what power, what advantage does she bring? She brings herself, Zachariah said coldly, which is more than enough for me, but not for us, not for the kingdom. Then perhaps you should explain why my happiness is less important than your political maneuvering. The room erupted in voices, some supporting the king, others demanding explanations, still others making suggestions about appropriate matches. Evelyn stood frozen in the center of it all, feeling like prey surrounded by predators. Then Malachi raised his hand and silence fell. Perhaps we should hear from the human herself. Girl, what is your name? Evelyn Harper. Evelyn Harper. Why do you think you're suitable to stand beside a vampire king? The question was designed to humiliate her, to make her scramble for justifications she didn't have. She could see it in his cold silver eyes, hear it in the contempt lacing his voice. She could play it safe, could give some humble answer about not presuming to be suitable, about leaving such decisions to wiser heads than hers, or she could tell the truth. I don't think I'm suitable, she said clearly. Suitability suggests I'm trying to fulfill requirements someone else. I'm not. I'm simply a person who cares about your king and whom he cares about in return. Whether that offends your political sensibilities isn't actually my concern. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Malachi's eyes widened fractionally. You dare speak to this council with such disrespect? I speak with honesty. You asked a question. I answered it. If you wanted me to grovel, you should have been clearer in your instructions. Evelyn, Zachariah murmured, though she could hear the suppressed amusement in his voice. No, let her speak, Malachi said. I'm curious what else this human has to say. Tell me, Evelyn Harper, do you understand what you're asking of our king? The scrutiny you'll face, the enemies you'll make, the constant judgment. I understand that loving someone means accepting complications. I understand that worthwhile things are rarely easy. And I understand that your king has been alone for 200 years, surrounded by people who see him as a political tool rather than a person. If I can offer him something different, if I can make him happy, then yes, I think that's worth facing scrutiny and judgment from people who have already decided to hate me. We don't hate you, child. We simply question whether you comprehend the magnitude of what you're undertaking. I comprehend perfectly. You want him to choose someone who strengthens alliances, someone who brings political advantage, someone who makes sense on paper. But people aren't political tools, not even kings. And maybe, just maybe, he deserves to choose based on what makes him happy rather than what makes you comfortable. Silence stretched through the chamber, thick and heavy. Then, unexpectedly, someone began to clap, slowly, rhythmically, the sound echoing off stone walls. Serafina rose from her seat in one of the lower tiers. The human has a point. We've spent 2 centuries pushing various matches at my brother, all strategically sound and emotionally empty. Perhaps it's time we prioritized his happiness over our political convenience. Serafina, you cannot possibly, Malachi began. I can possibly, and I do. She's right. We've treated him like a game piece rather than a person, and for what? So we can forge another meaningless alliance with families who care more about proximity to power than about him. She looked at Evelyn with something like approval. At least this one seems to actually see him. This is unprecedented, another council member protested. Good, Serafina said firmly. Precedent is just another word for doing things the way we've always done them. Maybe it's time for something new. The debate raged for another hour, but something had shifted. Serafina's support had cracked the unified front of disapproval, and other voices began joining hers. By the time the council finally dismissed them, the consensus seemed to be grudging tolerance rather than outright hostility. Zachariah led Evelyn out of the chamber, his hand warm or rather less cold on her back. Once they were in the corridor safely away from vampire hearing, He pulled her into an alcove and kissed her breathless. "That was incredible," he said against her mouth. "You were incredible. I was probably too honest. You were perfect. Brave and brilliant and absolutely perfect." He kissed her again, deeper this time, his hands tangling in her hair and disrupting the careful styling. "You faced down a room full of vampires and didn't flinch. I was flinching internally. But you didn't show it. You stood there and told them exactly what they needed to hear, that I'm a person, not a political tool, that happiness matters." His forehead rested against hers. "Do you have any idea how long it's been since someone defended me like that? You're a king. You shouldn't need defending. Kings need it most of all. We're just not allowed to admit it." He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "I love you, Evelyn Harper. I know it's too soon. I know we've only known each other days, but I love you, completely, irrevocably." Her heart felt too big for her chest. "I love you too. It's terrifying and impossible, and I love you." They stood there in the alcove, holding each other, while the palace carried on around them. Eventually, Zachariah led her back to her rooms, but he didn't leave. They sat together on the balcony, watching the city lights below, talking about nothing and everything until the sky began to lighten. "I should go," he said reluctantly as dawn approached. "Before the sun makes it uncomfortable." "Stay a little longer?" He smiled. "I would stay forever if I could. But I need rest and you need sleep. Tomorrow night I want to show you something." "What?" "A surprise. Trust me. With everything." He kissed her once more before leaving, and Evelyn fell into bed feeling exhausted and exhilarated and more alive than she'd ever been. She woke to find a letter slipped under her door. The handwriting was familiar. Her sister's. "Evelyn, Mother told me what you've done. I don't understand. You were supposed to help me, not compete with me. Now everyone is talking about you instead of me, and Lord Cassian has been distant ever since the king started courting you. You've ruined everything I worked for. I thought we were family. I thought we were supposed to support each other, but you've only ever been jealous of me, haven't you? I hope you're happy now that you've destroyed my chances. Isabel." The words stung, but less than they might have once. Evelyn could see the manipulation in them now, the way Isabel framed everything as Evelyn's fault rather than examining her own choices. Could see how her family had always positioned them as competitors rather than allies. She wrote back a single line. "I'm not responsible for your happiness, Isabel. Find your own." That night Zachariah kept his promise. He led her through hidden corridors deep beneath the palace, downstairs carved from living stone, into depths that predated the city above. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice echoing. "To the heart of vampire power, the source of everything we are." He glanced back at her, crimson eyes glowing in the darkness. "I'm trusting you with this, Evelyn, with our greatest secret." They emerged into a cavern so vast she couldn't see the far walls. In the center, a pool of liquid glowed with soft red light, not blood, but something older, something that pulsed with ancient magic. "The Origin Well," Zachariah explained. "This is where the first vampires were made, 3,000 years ago, where magic and blood mingled to create something new. It's the source of our strength, our immortality, our power." Evelyn approached the edge carefully, staring down into the glowing depths. "Why show me this?" "Because I want you to understand what you're choosing. What I am, what my people are, we're not just humans with fangs and pale skin. We're magic made flesh, sustained by this." He gestured to the pool. "And if you choose to bind yourself to me permanently, this will be part of your life too. I need you to see it, to understand it, before you make that choice. I've already made the choice, you've made it emotionally. But decisions this big require more than emotion. They require full knowledge." He took her hand. "If we bind ourselves together, you would have options. You could remain human, accept an extended but still mortal lifespan through our bond. Or you could choose true immortality, become vampire through the Origin Well's power." "What would that mean?" "Becoming vampire. Drinking from the well, letting its magic transform you. You'd gain strength, speed, immortality. You'd need blood to survive. You'd be weakened by sunlight, not killed, despite the myths, but uncomfortable enough to avoid it. You'd have centuries or millennia to live." He paused. "But you'd also change, become something other than human. There's no reversing it." Evelyn stared at the glowing water. "And if I chose to stay human, then our bond would extend your life perhaps to 200 years instead of 80. Slower aging, better health, but still ultimately mortal. Still ultimately leaving me." His voice cracked slightly on the last words. "I won't lie to you, Evelyn, the thought of losing you terrifies me. But I would rather have you as you are for a human lifetime than change you into something you don't want to be." "What do you want?" "I want you happy. I want you willing. I want you to choose based on what you want, not what I need or what others expect." He turned to face her fully. "Take your time deciding. We have months, years before the binding ceremony would happen. There's no rush. But Evelyn found herself drawn to the pool, to the glowing promise it represented. A life measured in centuries. Time to read every book, understand every mystery, maybe even help bridge the gap between humans and vampires. Time with Zachariah measured not in decades but in ages. What if I wanted it? She asked quietly. The transformation. What if I wanted to choose immortality? His breath caught, unnecessary but habitual. Do you? I think I do. Not right now, maybe not soon, but eventually. If we're going to bind ourselves together, I want forever, not just a human lifetime. I want centuries to love you, to build something with you, to see what we can become together. She turned to meet his eyes. Is that wrong? It's not wrong. It's terrifying and wonderful and mine to give if you truly want it. He pulled her close. But you have to be sure, Evelyn. Once transformed, there's no going back. I know, and I'm not ready yet. But someday, when we're both sure the time is right. She kissed him softly. Thank you for showing me this, for trusting me with it. I trust you with everything. They stood together in the ancient cavern, surrounded by the source of vampire power, planning a future measured in forever. The weeks that followed fell into a pattern. Days, Evelyn explored the palace and its libraries, devouring texts on vampire history and politics. Nights, she and Zachariah were inseparable, walking the gardens, attending court functions together, working side by side on his correspondence and political documents. She discovered she had a talent for diplomatic language and strategy, and he increasingly sought her input on complex negotiations. The court remained divided. Some vampires accepted her presence with varying degrees of grace. Others made their disapproval clear through cold stares and cutting remarks. Serafina became an unlikely ally, appreciating Evelyn's sharp mind and refusing to tolerate disrespect toward her. From her human family, Evelyn heard nothing. No letters, no attempts at contact. It hurt less than she expected. She'd spent her whole life trying to earn their approval. Discovering she didn't need it felt like freedom. 2 months after that first night, Zachariah formally announced his intention to bind himself to Evelyn at the next seasonal court 3 months away. The announcement caused fresh uproar, but he faced it with the same calm certainty he brought to everything. Let them rage, he told Evelyn that night. Their anger changes nothing. I've made my choice. But complications arose from an unexpected source. Lord Cassian, the vampire who'd been courting Isabel, requested a private audience. Zachariah agreed with Evelyn present. Cassian was handsome in the way of vampires, pale and elegant with silver white hair and eyes like winter ice. He bowed to Zachariah, nodded curtly to Evelyn, then said, I've come to lodge a formal complaint, Your Majesty, regarding your human companion's sister, Evelyn Harper. She's been using your relationship with Evelyn to manipulate our courtship, claiming that she has influence with you through her sister, promising political access she cannot deliver, essentially leveraging your involvement with one Harper to benefit herself. Evelyn's stomach sank. That sounds like Isabel. I assumed you knew, Cassian continued, that this was some coordinated strategy between the sisters. We've had no contact since I came to the palace, Evelyn said firmly, and I would never help her manipulate anyone. What specifically has she promised you? Access to the king. Favorable trade agreements for my territory. Political support for an expansion project I've been pursuing. All through her sister's influence. His cold eyes studied her. You're saying she fabricated this? Completely. I have no political influence beyond what His Majesty chooses to grant me, and I would never abuse even that. Isabel is ambitious. She'll say whatever serves her purposes. Cassian's expression darkened. Then she's made a fool of me. Used me for status and access she never actually had. I'm sorry, Evelyn said, meaning it. For what it's worth, I don't think she's evil. Just desperate to secure her position. My family raised her to believe her worth depended on the match she made. That doesn't excuse deception. No, it doesn't. And I'm not asking you to excuse it, just to understand where it comes from. She glanced at Zachariah. Is this going to cause political problems? It could, Zachariah admitted. If Lord Cassian pursues a formal complaint, your sister could face charges of fraud and manipulation. At minimum, her reputation would be destroyed. More seriously, it could embarrass your family and potentially reflect poorly on you. I can't be held responsible for my sister's choices. No, but politically the connection exists. Our enemies will use it. Lord Cassian watched this exchange with calculating eyes. I want restitution for the time and resources I've wasted courting her under false pretenses. Name your price, Zachariah said. Not money. Information. Your human companion clearly has insights into manipulation and strategy. She anticipated her sister's behavior immediately. I want her to advise me on detecting such deception in the future. 2 consultations at her convenience. Evelyn blinked. You want me to teach you how to spot liars? I want you to share your understanding of human manipulation tactics. Yes, consider it payment for not pursuing charges against your sister. It was clever. It positioned Evelyn as someone with valuable skills while extracting a price for Isabel's mistakes without destroying her completely. She looked to Zachariah, who nodded slightly. The choice was hers. Agreed, she said. 2 consultations, I'll teach you what I know. After Cassian left, Zachariah pulled her into his arms. You handled that beautifully. I basically bribed him not to ruin my sister. You negotiated a solution that protects everyone involved and establishes you as someone with valuable expertise. That's statecraft. Evelyn, I just don't want Isabel hurt, even after everything. Is that stupid? It's compassionate. And it's one of the things I love about you. You could be bitter and vengeful, but you're not. You want better for the people who hurt you. He kissed her forehead. Though we should probably warn your sister to stop using your name for leverage. Evelyn wrote the letter that night. It was brief and direct. Stop telling people you have influence through me. You don't. If you continue, there will be consequences I can't protect you from. Find your own path, Isabel. The response came 3 days later. You've changed. You used to care about family. Evelyn crumpled the letter. She'd cared about family her entire life, enough to make herself invisible so Isabel could shine. But caring about family was supposed to flow both ways. She threw herself into preparations for the binding ceremony. The palace was a whirlwind of activity: seamstresses, musicians, caterers, decorators, all working to create an event worthy of a king's formal commitment. Evelyn found herself consulted on everything. Her opinions suddenly valuable in a way they'd never been before. She also spent time with Serafina, who'd taken it upon herself to educate Evelyn about vampire culture and politics. The binding ceremony is sacred, Serafina explained over tea one afternoon. It's not just a wedding, it's a magical linking of 2 souls, creating bonds that transcend death. When you bind yourself to my brother, you'll feel his emotions, sense his presence, share his strength. What will he feel from me? Everything. Your humanity, your warmth, your mortality until you choose otherwise. It will remind him why humans matter. Why we can't just rule through fear and dominance. Serafina set down her cup. I'm glad he chose you, Evelyn. You're good for him. You make him happy in a way I haven't seen in centuries. Thank you for supporting us. I know it wasn't easy, it wasn't. But love rarely is, and watching you face down the council, seeing you defend him like that, it reminded me that sometimes the heart knows things the mind hasn't figured out yet. She smiled slightly. Besides, you're interesting. The palace was getting boring. The binding ceremony took place on the first night of autumn, when the veil between worlds grew thin and magic flowed strongest. The palace's grand ballroom had been transformed into something from a dream: candles floating in midair, flowers that glowed with inner light, music that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Evelyn wore white silk embroidered with silver thread, the dress flowing around her like moonlight. Her hair was loose except for small braids woven with diamonds. She felt like a bride, like a queen. Like herself magnified into something grander. Zachariah waited at the center of the room, devastating in black formal wear with his white hair bound back, his crimson eyes bright with emotion. The entire court surrounded them in a circle, witnessing. The ceremony was conducted by the eldest vampire in the court, a woman named Moira, who looked young but claimed to have seen the rise and fall of empires. She spoke in a language Evelyn didn't understand, ancient words that resonated with power. Then came the vows. Zachariah took Evelyn's hands, his cold fingers steady and sure. I bind myself to you, Evelyn Harper. I offer you my strength, my protection, my immortal life. I promise to cherish your humanity, respect your choices, and love you for whatever time we share, mortal or eternal. I promise to see you, value you, and never ask you to be less than you are. This I swear before my court and my people, on my blood and honor. Evelyn's voice shook but held firm. I bind myself to you, Zachariah Konstantin. I offer you my trust, my partnership, my whole heart. I promise to stand beside you, support your reign, and love you through whatever comes. I promise to bring light to your darkness, challenge your assumptions, and remind you that power means nothing without compassion. This I swear before your court and your people, on my life and soul. Moira produced a ceremonial blade, silver and ancient. She pricked Zachariah's palm, then Evelyn's, pressing their hands together so their blood mingled. The moment their blood touched, power surged through Evelyn like lightning, hot and cold simultaneously, foreign and familiar. She gasped, her knees buckling, but Zachariah caught her. I've got you, he murmured. I've always got you. The power settled, weaving itself into her bones, creating connections she could feel but not see. She could sense him now, his presence in her mind like a warm pulse, his emotions bleeding into hers, love fierce and protective, pride, joy, wonder. It's done, Moira announced. The binding is complete, they are joined. The court erupted in applause, some genuine, some perfunctory, but applause nonetheless. Zachariah pulled Evelyn close and kissed her, and the connection between them flared bright and strong. The celebration lasted until dawn. Vampires danced with humans, wine flowed freely, and for one night the careful divisions between species seemed to blur. Evelyn found herself accepting congratulations from vampires who'd sneered at her months ago, fielding questions about her plans, being treated like the queen she'd effectively become. Near dawn, she and Zachariah escaped to their private chambers they would now share. She was exhausted, overwhelmed, happier than she'd ever imagined possible. "How do you feel?" he asked, helping her out of the elaborate dress. "Like I can sense you. Like you're in my head." "I am in a way, and you're in mine. It takes getting used to, but you'll learn to control it, to give each other privacy when needed." His hands were gentle as he freed her from the final layer of silk. "Any regrets? Nen you?" "How could I possibly regret binding myself to the most extraordinary woman I've ever met?" He pulled her down onto the bed, cradling her against his chest. "Sleep. We have eternity to figure out the rest." She slept, safe in his cold arms, connected to him in ways that transcended flesh and bone. The next few months were adjustment, learning to live with the bond, to share space and emotions and thoughts without losing herself, learning to navigate the court as Zachariah's acknowledged partner rather than his guest, learning what it meant to have power, real power, political power, the kind that made people listen when she spoke. Lord Cassian kept his word about the consultations. Evelyn taught him about human tells and manipulation tactics, and in return he became an unexpected ally in court politics. Other vampires began approaching her with questions about human culture, about trade negotiations, about the growing tensions between species. She discovered she was good at mediation, at finding common ground between vampire arrogance and human resentment, at crafting solutions that satisfied both sides. Zachariah started bringing her to council meetings, seeking her input on policy decisions. "You're becoming invaluable," he told her one night. "Half my advisors are terrified of you, and the other half want to recruit you. I'm just applying common sense." Common sense is surprisingly rare in politics. What you're doing, building bridges, fostering understanding, it's changing things. Slowly, but genuinely. From her human family, she heard nothing until her father showed up at the palace gates 6 months after the binding ceremony. Evelyn met him in a formal receiving room, with Zachariah present but silent beside her. Her father looked older than she remembered, grayer and more worn. "Evelyn," he said, his voice rough, "I've come to apologize." She waited, saying nothing. "Your mother and I, we were wrong. Wrong to favor Isabel so obviously. Wrong to demand you sacrifice yourself for her advancement. Wrong to let you believe you were less important, less worthy of love and attention." He twisted his hands together. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know that we see it now. See what we did to you." "What changed your mind?" Evelyn asked carefully, watching Isabel self-destruct. "After Lord Cassian ended their courtship, she spiraled. Tried to leverage your name with other vampire lords, got herself banned from half the court functions in the city. Your mother finally realized she'd created a monster, someone so desperate for validation and status that she'd sacrifice anything and anyone for it. And I realized we'd done the same thing to you. Made you believe your only value was in how well you supported others." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "I'm sorry, sweetheart, I'm so sorry." Evelyn felt Zachariah's hand on her back, grounding her. "Thank you for saying that, it means something. You've built an incredible life here. The king clearly adores you. You've become someone important, someone powerful. You did that yourself without any help from us. Not without help, just not from you." She gestured to Zachariah. "He helped. Serafina, Lord Cassian, others who saw my value when you couldn't. I don't expect you to come back to us. I don't expect you to forgive us. But I needed to tell you that we were wrong, that you were never the problem we were. It wasn't enough. Apologies couldn't undo years of being made invisible, of watching her sister shine while she faded. But it was something, a step toward healing perhaps." "I appreciate you coming," Evelyn said carefully, "and I'm glad you recognize what happened. But I can't just pretend everything's fine now. You hurt me, badly, and I need time to figure out what, if any, relationship we can have going forward." Her father nodded, unsurprised. "I understand. The offer stands if you ever wanted to rebuild something, but I'll understand if you don't." After he left, Zachariah pulled her close. "How do you feel?" "Sad, angry. Relieved, maybe? I spent so long wanting their approval. Hearing the apology should feel better than it does. Apologies are just words. They don't erase harm. But they're a start, if you want them to be. I don't know what I want where they're concerned. I just know I don't need them anymore. That's enough for now." A year after the binding ceremony, tensions between humans and vampires reached a breaking point. A radical human group attacked a vampire gathering, killing 3 and injuring dozens more. The Vampire Council demanded harsh retaliation. Human leaders called for protection and justice. Zachariah convened an emergency summit, bringing together human and vampire leaders to negotiate peace. Evelyn sat beside him as both participant and mediator, using everything she'd learned about both species to find common ground. The negotiations were brutal. Days of accusations and counter-accusations, demands for justice and cries of oppression. But slowly, painfully, she and Zachariah brokered a compromise, increased oversight of both vampire and human extremist groups, joint tribunals to handle cross-species crimes, educational initiatives to reduce fear and misunderstanding. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. "You did that," Zachariah told her after the final agreements were signed. "You brought them to consensus. We did it. Together." "Together," he agreed. "As we'll do everything for as long as we both exist." That night, standing in the Origin Well cavern, Evelyn made her choice. "I want immortality," she told him. "I want forever with you. I'm ready." His eyes widened. "Are you certain?" "Completely. I've had a year to think about it, to experience what being bound to you means. I've built a life I love, work that matters, a relationship worth preserving. I don't want to lose this in 60 years. I want centuries. I want forever. The transformation is painful and permanent. I know. I'm ready anyway." He studied her face, searching for doubt. Finding none, he nodded slowly. "Then let's give you forever." The process was ritual and magic combined. She drank from the Origin Well, the liquid tasting like copper and starlight and ancient power. Then Zachariah bit her wrist, drinking her human blood while she drank his vampire blood, mingling their essences. Finally, she submerged herself in the well completely, letting its magic transform her at the cellular level. The pain was extraordinary, every cell in her body dying and being reborn as something other. She screamed, thrashing in the glowing water, while Zachariah held her and whispered reassurance she couldn't hear through the agony. Then it stopped. The pain vanished like it had never been. She surfaced, gasping unnecessarily, and opened eyes that saw the world differently now. Everything was sharper, colors more vivid, sounds more distinct. She could hear Zachariah's unnecessary breathing, smell the ancient stone of the cavern, feel the magic pulsing through the well like a living heartbeat. And she was strong. She climbed from the well effortlessly, water streaming off skin that was now porcelain pale. Her hair darkened from auburn to deep mahogany. She looked at her hands, same but different, powerful and eternal. "How do you feel?" Zachariah asked, his voice reverent. "Alive, more alive than I've ever felt." She looked up at him, seeing him through new eyes, seeing the aura of power that surrounded him, the ancient magic that sustained him, and hungry. He produced a glass of blood, donated human blood, ethically sourced through the palace's medical program. She drank, and it was nothing like she'd imagined. It didn't taste like copper or death. It tasted like life, like energy, like everything she needed. "Welcome to immortality," Zachariah said, pulling her close. "Welcome to forever." 5 years later, Evelyn stood beside Zachariah at another summit, this one celebrating the 5th anniversary of the Human-Vampire Accord, the treaty she'd helped negotiate. Relations between species weren't perfect, but they were improving. Mixed courts like this one, where humans and vampires mingled freely, were becoming common rather than rare. She'd become a fixture of vampire politics, the king's consort, but also a power in her own right. She mediated disputes, advised on policy, and had started a program to train young vampires in human culture and young humans in vampire customs. Her family still existed in the periphery of her life. She had coffee with her father occasionally, formal conversations where they danced around the past. Isabel sent a congratulations note when Evelyn's transformation became public knowledge, but made no attempt at deeper contact. Her mother had never apologized and likely never would. Evelyn found she didn't care. She'd built a family of choice, Zachariah, Serafina, Cassian, and a dozen other vampires and humans who valued her for who she was rather than what she could do for them. "Happy?" Zachariah asked, his arm around her waist as they watched the celebration. "Incredibly. You?" "I've been happy since the moment I saw you trying to be invisible in that ballroom. But yes, incredibly happy." He kissed her temple. "Thank you for choosing this, for choosing me, for choosing forever. Thank you for seeing me when everyone else wanted me hidden, for loving me exactly as I am, for giving me a life worth living for centuries." They stood together, watching the world they were helping build, a world where humans and vampires coexisted not through dominance and submission but through genuine partnership, where being different didn't mean being lesser, where love could cross species and centuries and social expectations. Evelyn Harper, who'd once been told to stay quiet and let her sister shine, had found her voice. and the vampire king who'd watched her from across a ballroom had found his equal. Together they had forever, and they intended to make it extraordinary.